Hey there. You're listening to True Story No Cap. Real stories, no exaggeration, no lies. Just the raw, unfiltered moments life throws our way. Relax, lean back, and let's get started. David Miller sat in his office, his head in his hands. This day felt endless, 20 years. A full 20 years he had dedicated to his life's work. Surgery wasn't just a profession, it was his very being. From a young age, he was driven by a dream to save human lives. So, when it came time to choose a path after school, he didn't hesitate to submit his documents to medical school. The entrance exams were no obstacle for David. Studying had always come easily to him, especially the natural sciences. The years at the academy were filled with a passion for learning. With an almost mystical obsession, he plunged into the study of anatomy, a subject that was a source of nightmares for many of his classmates. He grasped it intuitively, as if remembering something long forgotten. During his first practicals, the sight of blood didn't make him faint. It only heightened his focus as he absorbed every word from his mentors. They predicted a brilliant future for him, as few students showed such a deep, almost sacred interest in the medical craft. It seemed that being a doctor for David wasn't just a job, but a higher calling. And so it turned out. After his internship, Miller was assigned to a regional hospital, a rare stroke of luck for a recent graduate. From the very first days, he began to prove that he was worthy of bearing the proud title of doctor. Miller honed his skill. His hands, it seemed, were woven from gold. The chief physician almost immediately noticed the young surgeon's exceptional talent. His colleagues didn't hide their envy. He wasn't even 30 yet, and he was already performing operations of the highest complexity. The hospital staff was divided into two camps. Some admired Miller, seeing him as a role model, while others whispered about connections, incredible luck, and other dark forces. But despite the gossip, David achieved one professional victory after another. He was completely indifferent to what others thought of him. The only thing that held true meaning for him was human life. Miller's career soared upwards. In 20 years, he had managed to bring thousands of people back to life, working almost without days off and never taking vacations. The surgeon had completely forgotten about himself. He never managed to start a family. Of all his close relatives, only his mother remained, who had been his support since childhood and did everything to help him confidently pursue his dream. Of course, there were women in his life, but he couldn't build a lasting relationship with any of them. No one could endure his lifestyle. Work always came first for him. And now, after so many years, his impeccable reputation was questioned for the first time. A patient died right on the operating table. This was the first time it had happened in his many years of practice. Everyone understood perfectly that a medical error was out of the question. Miller's skill had never been doubted. The patient was brought in critical condition. There was practically no chance of survival. For the medical staff, his death was a natural outcome. Only a miracle could have saved that person. Alas, no miracle occurred. No matter how brilliant a surgeon Miller was, he was not omnipotent. After the unsuccessful operation, he simply went to his office and locked himself inside. He didn't want to see anyone. The deceased's relatives weren't at the hospital yet, and he had to deliver the terrible news to them. David didn't even know where to start. Usually he saw faces lit up with joy before him. That expression of boundless happiness gave him strength. He, an ordinary man, would enter the fray with death and emerge victorious. But now everything was different. There was a knock on the office door. David didn't react immediately. The knock repeated. Miller reluctantly rose from his desk and moved toward the door. Behind it stood the chief physician, a stately woman in her early 40s. Everyone feared Dr. Anna Clark, except for David. This woman had once been the love of his life. Back then, she was the clinic's most beautiful woman and his colleague, shining in the glow of professional fame. Serious and driven, she immediately caught the surgeon's attention. He fell in love at first sight, although he had always denied the possibility of such a feeling. To his surprise, Anna returned his affections, and a passionate romance quickly ignited between them. But even she couldn't accept the fact that work would always be more important to him than she was. After living together for 4 years, Anna and David broke up. Neither held grudges. They both understood perfectly that such a choice was often inevitable in their profession. The woman remained a loyal friend to Miller. Even after becoming chief physician, she retained warm feelings for her former lover. But now, there wasn't a trace of friendliness on her face. "Dave," she said, looking away. This isn't the time for talking. A man died on me. I could have saved him, and I failed. Miller's voice trembled. It seemed he was about to burst into tears. All right, calm down. Anna cut him off sharply. Nothing can be fixed now, and you know perfectly well that it was too late to save him. This isn't your fault. What's the point of beating yourself up now? Anna locked the door from the inside and sat down on the sofa. David sank down beside her and leaned back heavily against the cushion. I know, he sighed, but I can't help it. This is the first time in my entire career I'll still blame myself. I can't help it. That's wrong, Dave. She placed her hand on his. You just have to accept that you can't always save a patient. Not always. Many doctors face this, I agree. It takes time to get through it, to come to terms with it, to accept it. But you have to keep working. While you're suffering here, people still need you. That's what matters. When was the last time you took a vacation anyway? What does that matter? Miller asked indifferently. It matters a lot, Anna almost shouted, frowning. Take at least a week off. You need it badly right now. Get yourself together. I can't let you fall into a depressed state. It will affect your work. And God forbid you might even leave the profession. That happens too. Never, David objected energetically. Perhaps you're right. I'll go to the mountains. You always recover quickly there. In his youth, Miller was fond of hiking. Perhaps it was the only thing he looked forward to on weekends. Alone with nature, he quickly regained his strength and composure. Anna didn't suggest the vacation just like that. She knew exactly where he would go. All right, don't come in starting tomorrow. I'll expect you back at work on the 3rd. Go home now. Rest. What about the relatives? I'll talk to them myself. It's a delicate matter. You understand? And he was a difficult person. We're trying to reach his wife now, but her phone is off. As far as I know, she's away right now. God, I can't imagine how she'll react when she finds out her husband is gone. Don't think about that now. Okay, let me call you a taxi. You shouldn't be driving in this state. The week flew by. David had almost completely regained his peace of mind. Being entirely alone there had a beneficial effect. Miller had his own roots that few people knew about. When he returned from the hike, thoughts of what had happened barely bothered him. The next day he went to work. No operations were scheduled for that day. He saw a few scheduled patients and spent most of the day in his office. Around 5, Dr. Clark called him. Miller was contemplating death. Why? Why are some people destined for a happy fate, while others are forced to fight for the right to live? Why did I choose this path? Am I so vain that I dare to take on the burden of battling death? I'm just a man. No, I shouldn't think like that. If it weren't for people like me, the world would descend into chaos. Maybe Anna is right. I shouldn't blame myself for the inevitable. It's impossible to save everyone. What's the point of giving up now? I can still save thousands of lives. Miller stopped before the door to Clark's office. For some reason, he was afraid to go in. There was a heavy sense of foreboding. Dr. Clark? He peeked inside. You called? Yes, come in. Anna was sitting at her desk. She looked tired. Her usual expression of confidence had left her face. Instead of a strong woman, Miller saw before him an almost defenseless girl who had recently been crying. The chief physician's eyes were red-rimmed. What happened? He asked, concerned. David, the woman sighed. I had a very difficult conversation this morning. Mr. Thompson's wife came. That name stung, he said, surprised. He died a week ago. She wasn't in the country. I had to listen to a lot. Why didn't you call me earlier? I wanted to talk to her myself first. I wanted to understand how she would react to the news of her husband's death. But this woman, in short, she's demanding that I fire you. On what grounds? Miller exclaimed indignantly. You yourself said that what happened wasn't my fault? We all understand that, Dave, but I want to talk to her myself. How can I find her? It's pointless. You see, this Mr. Thompson was a difficult man. His wife will do everything she can to ruin your career. I explained everything to her, but this woman, she's convinced he could have been saved. You know yourself, in situations like this, it's very hard to prove otherwise. That's ridiculous. There was no medical error. I did everything possible. This man's condition was far gone. If he had come in earlier, maybe it could have been fixed. Now listen, I'm on your side. But you know yourself, whoever has the power is right. This woman has connections in the Ministry of Health. She's absolutely determined to see this through. If I don't fire you now, heads will roll, including mine. I can't take that risk. You know I'll go to court. It's simply ridiculous to accuse me of incompetence when they let it get to this point themselves. That's your right, but right now? I'm sorry, but I have to give in to her. I can't do otherwise, Dave. Try to understand my position, too. David's face twisted into a grim smile. What does it matter where her connections are? The truth is on our side. Alas, we live in a bureaucratic world. Here, whoever goes to the lawyers first is right. So what's the problem? I'll hire a lawyer right now. Listen to me, David. From my experience, I know your chances will be slim. It's your right to sue for wrongful dismissal. But right now, you need to do as I said. We don't need problems. To hell with all of you. Do what you want. I'm free. Yes. Anna lowered her eyes. You can go. Don't come to work starting tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I hope things will work out eventually. David walked out of the office, slamming the door forcefully. What do they think they're doing? This is unbelievable. I've dedicated so many years to this just for some idiot to come along and erase everything. Yes, of course, I'll go to court. I don't care who she's connected to. I know I'm not guilty. Let them all go to hell, that bunch of imbeciles. Because of one death that was inevitable, hundreds more that could have been avoided might happen. David didn't even bother to pack his things. He simply left the office without saying anything to anyone. The news of the leading surgeon's dismissal would likely cause a huge stir. Despite his detractors, most of the staff liked Miller and sincerely respected him. David didn't want to explain anything to anyone. He said goodbye to his colleagues and the receptionists as usual, got into his parked car, and took a deep breath. He desperately wanted a cigarette. Miller hadn't smoked for about 7 years. He had quit the bad habit after breaking up with Anna, but now, from somewhere in his subconscious, came a clear, insistent demand. David drove out of the parking lot and headed to the nearest kiosk. Miller bought a pack, got back in the car, and took a drag with pleasure. For a fraction of a second, the long-awaited calm arrived, but with each puff it receded further. Throwing the butt out, David drove home. His mind was in complete turmoil. He drove mechanically, moving in the obedient flow of traffic. I should at least get some groceries, he said aloud. The supermarket was just a couple of steps from his building. David parked near the entrance and decided to walk. He just walked, seeing no one around. In the supermarket, Miller mechanically filled his cart, not even looking at the products. When he reached the checkout and found he had accumulated 4 full bags of groceries, he was very surprised. But he wasn't going to put them back, was he? David slowly left the store and ambled home. Young man, a voice reached him from somewhere far away. Miller didn't even immediately realize he was being addressed. He hadn't considered himself young for a long time. Young man. The call was repeated. This time, David turned his head towards the source of the sound. A couple of steps away stood a woman in worn clothes, holding the hand of a girl about 6 years old. I'm sorry to bother you. How can I help? David replied. The heavy bags were digging painfully into his palms. The only thing he wanted right now was to get home quickly and get rid of this burden. Could you please give us a little money? My daughter is very hungry. As if to confirm her words, the girl squeaked something. From her appearance, it was clear the child was undernourished. The little girl was very thin, with dark circles under her eyes. Her mother looked no better. David knew that beggars often played on pity, pretending to be unfortunate. He glanced at the pair. Either the mother and daughter were amazing actresses, or they were genuinely in need of help. He didn't want to give money, and he didn't have any cash on him anyway. I don't have any money, he said dryly, but maybe groceries would help. I bought so much, and I don't need it all for myself. The woman's eyes lit up. David thought. She doesn't seem to be lying. He handed the stranger 2 heavy bags. Here, take these. Honestly, I don't remember what's in them, but there's bound to be something. You can go home now and cook. Thank you so much. Tears welled up in the woman's eyes. I don't even know how to thank you. People are so cruel these days, they don't care about other people's troubles. My pride wouldn't let me beg. But what can you do? I feel sorry for my daughter. I don't care about myself." "What happened to you?" David asked unexpectedly. He hadn't intended to talk to the woman, but something inside him ached. He couldn't walk past someone else's sorrow. "Why do you ask?" the woman said, flustered. "Life happened to us. You can't tell it all. Thank you for the groceries. We'll be going." "Wait!" David suddenly called out after the retreating woman. "I can see that things are far from okay for you. If there's anything I can do to help, tell me. I'm in a difficult situation myself right now. I know what it's like when life doesn't go according to plan." "How can I ask a stranger for something?" The woman sighed resignedly. "Groceries are one thing, although even that is so much." "Hold on. First, I offered to help myself. That's different. Second, if you're really in trouble, don't refuse. In a nutshell, briefly, Alice and I have nowhere to go. We've been living on the streets for the second week." The woman shifted from foot to foot. David looked at the mother and daughter again. The woman didn't look like she drank, and her clothes, though dirty, were decent. Her speech was articulate, not like someone who had given up. The girl was very quiet, frightened, with huge eyes. "All right," Miller looked around. "Let's do this. I live right here in the next building, just a couple of steps away. I live with my mother, but she's at the dasha right now. There's a free room. We'll go there now, and you can tell me everything. You can stay with me for a while until you figure something out." "You?" The woman's eyes widened. The offer somewhat bewildered her. "You don't know us at all, and we don't know you." "See? We're essentially in the same position. Don't be scared. There's a concierge in the building. She won't keep quiet if anything happens. Don't be afraid, please. I just can't leave you and your daughter on the street now. You haven't had a hot meal for days, have you? And who knows what else?" "I don't know." The woman was still hesitant. "We don't really have a choice." "There's always a choice. I'm not taking you prisoner. You'll eat, drink, get your clothes sorted out. You can leave afterwards, but at least my conscience will be clear." "All right," the woman agreed, though still with doubt. "My name's Tanya, by the way, and my daughter is Alice." "David Andrew Miller," the man introduced himself. "You can just call me David and use you." David bustled in the kitchen while Tanya and her daughter tidied themselves up in the bathroom. Eugenia Viktorovna Miller, David's mother, rarely stayed in the city during the summer. She preferred to spend time at the dacha. Her son hadn't even had time to tell her anything. "I wonder what Mom would say if she were home now," Miller thought. Would she be angry? No, I think she'd be worried herself. She's not the kind of person to abandon someone in trouble, even strangers. Miller had already finished preparing the roast when his guests finally appeared in the kitchen. Tatiana had put on some clothes David had found for her and her daughter, old t-shirts and sweatpants. When Miller saw the transformed ladies, he was very surprised. Tatiana looked significantly younger than he had first thought. She was a rather young woman, about 30, with long blonde hair and huge gray eyes. The girl was a miniature copy of her. Looking at them, one thing was clear. They hadn't eaten in a long time. Both were very thin. David didn't delay and invited them both to the table. "Well," he said a little awkwardly, "enjoy your meal. I hope my cooking doesn't disappoint you. I made a roast. Just eat slowly or your stomachs might hurt." Tanya and Alice began to eat. The girl was shy at first, but her mother reassured her. When dinner was finished, David served tea. Tanya gradually recovered, and a blush even appeared on her cheeks. "Alice," David said to the girl, "maybe you'd like to watch some cartoons?" "Yes," the girl replied uncertainly and looked at her mother. Tanya nodded. Miller turned on the TV in the living room and settled the little girl on the sofa. When he and Tanya were alone in the kitchen, he began to ask questions. "Tell me, Tatiana, what happened to you?" Tanya was silent for a long time, gathering her thoughts. Finally, she decided. "I couldn't stand it anymore. I just took Allie some money and just left. At that moment, it didn't matter at all where I went. I just wanted to leave that terrible place." Terrible place? In David's imagination, some kind of torture chamber immediately sprang up. "Yes, my home. You understand? My husband isn't just a tyrant, he's worse. But Alice and I have no one but him. I put up with his abuse for a very long time, but I reached my limit." The woman burst into tears. "Was it really that bad? Did he hit you?" Tanya nodded. Another couple of minutes passed before she could continue. I married Michael very young. I wasn't even 20 yet. My parents died in an accident, I was left completely alone, and Michael seemed like a real hero. He courted me beautifully, carried me in his arms. Only 3 months passed from the moment we met, and he took me to the registry office. I saw no reason to refuse, because back then I thought I loved him. We lived quite well. My husband worked in a bank and earned good money, but he didn't allow me to work. In his opinion, a wife should take care of the home and children. I didn't really protest, although even then I should have wondered what kind of person he was. Until Alice was born, he didn't allow himself anything like that. Of course, sometimes he showed his temper and caused rows. He wouldn't let me leave the house. I had to stop seeing all my friends. For 5 years, I couldn't get pregnant, which made Michael incredibly angry. He accused me of infertility, of being inadequate as a woman. And then suddenly I found out I was going to be a mother. I don't even know how it happened. I didn't get any special checkups. God just sent a child. Throughout the pregnancy, Michael was literally beaming with happiness. He really wanted a son. He wouldn't let me find out the baby's sex beforehand. He just believed it would be a boy, that's all. And then a girl was born. Yes, David sighed. Yes, Tanya nodded. And from that moment on, he was like a different person. He literally hated me and Allie. He never loved her, but he tried not to show it openly, especially to his parents and friends. No, he bought her everything, denied her nothing, but he didn't feel fatherly affection, and his attitude towards me changed completely. If before Michael might just snap, be rude, ignore me for half a day, after Alice was born, he often started hitting me. It started with slaps. If I raised my voice, that was the immediate punishment. I endured it. Well, and then it got worse. One day, Michael came home drunk. I went into the bedroom to avoid getting in his way. When he came in, I pretended to be asleep, but that apparently didn't suit him. He started waking me up, beat me very badly. The pain was simply unbearable. I screamed. Alice woke up. Even the neighbors were banging on the door. There was blood everywhere. But Michael, he has connections everywhere. He quickly hushed it up, threatened to kill me if I reported it to the police. I was a fool to listen to him then. I shouldn't have been afraid. And what was I supposed to tell the police? That my husband beats me? People live like that. In the end, this habit became systematic for my husband. He started getting drunk often after work, and beatings inevitably followed. I had nowhere to go, and I was afraid to go to the police. Did he hit you every day? No, not every day. When he came back sober, he'd act like nothing had happened, even try to show some affection, take me places. He also hit me in a way that only left marks on my body. He understood that marks on my face would attract attention, and it wasn't fitting for him to have a wife like that. His parents and our friends often came to visit. What about his parents? Didn't they suspect anything? Of course they suspected. When I told my mother-in-law, she just laughed at me, told me not to dare slander her precious son. When I showed her the bruises, she said, "You're running around God knows where with men. They give you bruises, and here I am playing the saint." But what men? I never had anyone but Michael, and my father-in-law. He even felt sorry for me, but he said, "You're a wife, you have to endure it, that's all." Can you imagine? Tanya burst into tears. It was clear that the memories caused her great pain. This went on for almost 6 years. I was simply living in hell. Michael became more and more sophisticated. The real nightmare happened when Alice was staying with her grandparents. He kept me on a leash all weekend. I don't want to describe all the details. It went on endlessly. The last time, he outdid himself. I needed to go to the hospital, but he ordered me not to. When Michael saw I was covered in blood, he finally took pity, and they took me away. It turned out I had a miscarriage. I begged the doctor not to tell my husband about it. Seeing the bruises and abrasions on my body, the doctor said he would immediately contact the police, but I still insisted on keeping it a secret. I just said I had a bad fall from a stepladder at home. We were renovating one of the rooms. The doctor shook his head but couldn't do anything without my consent. I would have. But he agreed not to inform Michael about the miscarriage. I just knew, if he found out, he would simply kill me. It wouldn't have mattered that he was the cause of what happened. When I was discharged from the hospital, he was already waiting for me at home. He didn't even come to pick me up. Can you imagine? Most of all, I was afraid for Alice, but thank God. She was staying with her grandparents all that time and having a good time. Is it even appropriate to call it that? Michael went on a business trip. He usually didn't travel like that, but there was some conference or seminar. He had to go for 2 weeks. That's when I realized it was my chance. I had to run without looking back. I simply couldn't live in constant fear and pain anymore. But where to go? He didn't give me money. I only scraped together enough for groceries, but that amount quickly ran out. I packed my things as soon as he left, didn't tell anyone anything. It was dangerous, especially since I have no relatives or friends. I asked my father-in-law for a little money, supposedly to buy Alice some things. He, I think, understood everything. This man was the only one who tried to help me in some way, but he lived under his wife's thumb his whole life, afraid to go against her will. Should I judge him? After all, I was in much the same position. And what did you do? Where did you go? That's just it. Nowhere. I rented a cheap room in a different district, far from the old apartment. I thought about getting a job, but I had Allie with me, nowhere to put her. There was no money for kindergarten or a nanny. The money ran out in 3 months, you understand. If I'd been alone, I would have managed somehow. I found a small part-time job. I went floor cleaning in the evenings. David looked at this fragile young woman. It was clear she wasn't used to physical labor. He imagined how hard it must have been for her to decide on such a low-paying job. I have no education or experience. Where else was I supposed to go? Besides, I was very afraid that Michael would find us. Before I got married, I was studying, but I dropped out after my parents died, and Michael didn't let me at all. Just the house, the family hearth, damn it. So now I'm 31, with a child to care for, and a constant feeling of fear. All of this can be resolved. I understand you're scared and the circumstances are difficult, but I can help. And how did you end up on the street? How long has this been going on? We lived in the room for 3 months. When the money ran out, I managed to convince the landlady to let us stay on credit for a while longer, but at some point her patience ran out, and we simply had to leave and go onto the street. At first, we were at the train station. I tried to get into a rehabilitation center, but I thought Michael could easily find us there. So we just wandered around. I had to quit my job because I had nowhere to leave Alice. And then I had to swallow my pride and start begging. I knew it was the end, but there was still hope for a miracle. And here it is. Tatiana tried to smile but started crying again. David put an arm around her shoulders and tried to comfort her. Tanya, listen, I won't promise anything, but I think I can help. You can stay with me for now. Mom will be back from the dacha soon, of course, but she's an understanding woman. She won't kick you out onto the street. I have a friend who has a private clinic. How about getting you a job there as an administrator? It's not a great job, but you have to start somewhere. And then we'll see. Really? A mixture of joy and doubt was reflected in Tanya's huge eyes. I'll do everything around the house. I don't want you to think I'm a freeloader. What about your husband? You'll have to get a divorce. Since you have a young child, it will have to go through court. He'll take Alice. You understand there's little chance she'll be left with me? I have no job, no home, and he has money, an apartment, influence. Nonsense. Everything can always be resolved. I have influential acquaintances, too. Among them are several good lawyers, even a judge and a couple of prosecutors. Do you work for the authorities? No, not even close. I'm a surgeon, or rather, I was one, until today. How so? Tanya asked, surprised. I was fired today. A patient died on the operating table, and even though it wasn't my fault, his relatives are convinced otherwise. He was a difficult person. I don't even know where to start now. In any case, I won't let this go. But for now, I had to give in to the chief physician. I'll sue. There's nothing else left. Right now, I need to pull myself together. David and Tanya sat in the kitchen for a little while longer, talking, after which the woman went to bed. Alice was already sleeping peacefully under the glow of the TV. Tanya gently lifted the girl and carried her to the bedroom. What are you saying? Eugenia Viktorovna Miller's voice sounded extremely agitated. How could they fire you? How dare they? You can't find a specialist like you anywhere. Mom, it's too long to explain everything over the phone. I don't want to. Come over then. You don't have anything else to do right now anyway, and I actually need some help here. I'm redoing the flower bed and digging is hard for me alone. Will you come? David thought about Tanya and Alice. It was awkward to leave them. and in principle it was probably dangerous to leave a stranger alone in the apartment. Her story, of course, didn't raise doubts, but anything can happen in life. Refusing, taking Tanya and the little girl with him wasn't an option either. "All right, I'll come then, closer to evening. I need to finish some other things." "I'll be waiting, son. You haven't done anything foolish, have you?" "Mom, stop. All right, see you." Miller hung up. He had just woken up, and the conversation with his mother had fully roused him. "I'll have to go. All right, I'll trust Tanya's decency. I have a feeling she's not the kind of person to repay kindness with malice." David went into the kitchen. To his surprise, Tanya was already busy with chores. She had managed to tidy up and prepare breakfast. A steaming cup of coffee was already on the table. "I heard you woke up and decided to quickly make some coffee. Is it all right that I'm making myself at home?" "Of course," Miller smiled. "Make yourself at home. Honestly, I didn't expect breakfast." "How else? I did it mechanically for so many years. And here, for the first time, with pleasure, I just don't know if you eat fried eggs and all this." David looked at the set table with surprise. Tanya had managed to prepare more than just fried eggs. On a plate was a huge steaming pile of serniki, cottage cheese pancakes. He hadn't seen anything like it since childhood. "Wow, serniki. I haven't had these in ages, and they're exactly like Dad used to make. I never saw Eugenia Viktorovna make serniki like these. It was his signature dish. After the divorce, Mom erased Dad from her life, and serniki ended up on the forbidden list." David ate the contents of the plates with appetite. "By the way, I got the recipe from my father, too. Apparently some men have the same weaknesses. Dad often made them, and then I learned." "What a coincidence," he said. "Is she up and about yet? I gave her a pencil and paper. She's drawing. My daughter loves it." "Then we need to get her some art supplies right away. I'm going downtown now, so I'll look for something." "Great," Tanya exclaimed, genuinely pleased. "Maybe you need something too? We could go together?" Tanya hesitated. "I don't really want to go out unnecessarily." "Okay, I understand. No problem. Just tell me what to buy, and I'll get it. As you can see, I don't have many women's things." "Nothing is needed, thank you," the young woman replied modestly. "Well, suit yourself," Miller shook his head. "No need to be shy." "I'm not shy," Tanya blushed. "I just don't know what I need. You have such a house. It seems like you have everything here." Tanya?" Miller began suddenly, having finally decided to tell her about his departure. "Here's the thing. I need to go away for about 3 days. Can you manage here without me? I'll buy groceries. If you need anything, order delivery. I'll leave you a card." "How can you?" Tanya exclaimed, frightened. "Are you really going to leave us alone in the apartment? You don't know me at all. What if something happens? Like a global flood?" "Go down to the concierge. She has the numbers for all the emergency services. I'll tell the doorman that my sister is visiting with her niece so they're aware." "I won't go out anywhere." "That's good. But can you take Alice out into the yard? The girl needs fresh air. Our yard is enclosed. There are no outsiders here. Go out the back of the building. I'll show you everything. I'll be back from downtown quickly. We'll discuss everything, okay?" Tanya stood by the stove, completely bewildered. She had not expected this amazing man to show her such trust. David arrived in Coladino in the evening. The dacha village wasn't far from the city, but the roads were jammed with cars. His mother met him in the garden. The miller's dacha was located in a picturesque spot, surrounded by forest on 2 sides. David loved these pines, the air filled with the scent of resin and needles. The vegetable garden occupied a small plot. Eugenia Viktorovna, Miller's main pride, was not the vegetable beds at all. Flower beds were laid out everywhere, already fragrant with hundreds of shades. Eugenia Viktorovna knew some secret her neighbors believed, gasping and exclaiming over her luxurious flower beds. But the woman herself claimed that her only fertilizer was love. David was talking with his mother. This woman had long since passed her 60s, but that didn't prevent her from looking excellent and engaging in active pursuits. When his father left, she was left alone with a 7-year-old son to care for. Of course, it was difficult, but it wasn't the exhausting work and daily chores that were a heavy burden. On the contrary, physical labor helped Eugenia Viktorovna not to think about her ex-husband. She had loved Robert dearly. Eugenia tried to please her husband in every way, managed the household, raised their son, worked, and took care of herself. But one day, when Davy had just started first grade, Robert came home from work and simply started packing his things. Eugenia thought her husband was going on a business trip, but he took her hand and, looking her directly in the eyes, announced that he had fallen in love with someone else. What she heard seemed like a cruel joke. Robert explained something, but the words didn't even reach Eugenia. When the door closed behind her husband, she finally came to her senses. At first, she tried to get him back, even tracked down where Robert was living now. She saw the other woman. From the outside, the couple seemed happy. That's when Jeannie realized that her husband was gone forever. She didn't make a scene. She simply erased him from her life. One day, Robert came to see his son. That's when Jeannie told him everything she felt and asked him not to appear again. Since he had chosen a different life, he shouldn't dwell on the old one. Robert understood. David never saw him again. When Robert died, David wasn't informed. Miller didn't grieve much. He barely remembered Robert. His mother had convinced him that this man wasn't worthy of being called a father. "Davy!" Eugenia Viktorovna exclaimed joyfully. "I'm so happy to see you. How are you? Let's go inside quickly. You can tell me what happened." "Mom, honestly, I don't even want to explain all of it. It's a bad situation. I'm going to sue." David told his mother everything. The woman listened in silence, only occasionally shaking her head. "How could Annie allow something like that? I just don't understand." "Mom, don't worry about it. It's definitely not your problem." "How can it not be mine?" Eugenia Viktorovna exclaimed, throwing up her hands. "You're my son. I know how hard you worked, and now they're just destroying your life's work. It's not right." "What honor are you talking about? In this world, money and connections decide everything. If that's the case, then I won't give up either. And I have those connections. I've saved the lives of many influential people. I think many will gladly agree to help me." "That's right. All right, get some rest now. And then, you see, you'll tackle things with renewed strength. If only you'd sort out your personal life." "Mom!" Miller looked at her sternly. "How many times have we talked about this? Family isn't for me, and the fact that I'm out of work right now isn't a reason to think otherwise. It's temporary." "I just want grandchildren," his mother sighed. "I'm not young anymore. Time is running out, and I still haven't had a chance to cuddle them." "Don't be sad," David hugged Eugenia Viktorovna. "Grandchildren aren't everything. Look how well you've done. The flower beds are beyond praise this year. The neighbors are probably all green with envy." "Oh, don't even mention it. I want to— on that plot over there." The woman gestured vaguely in some direction. "Will you help me dig a little there? We just need to dismantle the old shed. It spoils the whole view." "That's what I came for," Miller laughed. "Well, give me the crowbar and shovel. I'll start right now." "Are you crazy? It's nighttime already. We'll start in the morning. Let's go. I'll feed you some pies for now, your favorites with green onions." They settled in the summer kitchen. David listened to the crickets chirping and admired the sunset sky. "It's nice here," he thought. "Maybe I should just drop everything, move to the countryside, and become a farmer. I've saved enough money. What do I need so much for, being alone? And medicine? What can you do when material principles come first, not moral ones? I'll never accept that." "Mom," he said suddenly. "What is it, son?" Eugenia Viktorovna seemed to have already dozed off. "I need to tell you something." "All right," his mother squinted. "I don't like your tone." "Well," Miller began, "yesterday I was coming back from work, completely shattered, and I met a woman with a child. They looked so lost, so hungry. Anyway, I gave them 2 bags of groceries." "That's right, son. There's nothing wrong with that, a good deed." "That's not all. They're going to stay with us for a while." "What?" His mother looked at Miller, bewildered. "What do you mean they'll stay?" "Mom, Tanya, and Alice are in a very difficult situation. They have nowhere to go. I just couldn't leave them in trouble." David recounted everything Tatiana had told him to his mother. The woman just gasped. "Davy? But still, how could you leave complete strangers alone in the apartment? We have valuables, electronics in there." "What electronics, Mom?" Miller exclaimed, throwing up his hands. "They won't take anything. The girls are scared to death. All they need right now is a warm place to stay. I want to help Tanya get a job. I don't know why, but she inspired my trust. Uh-huh. Think about it yourself. How many people would agree to let her into their home like that? It's a questionable setup. You could wait your whole life like that. No, she's telling the truth. You should have seen them. Alice is almost transparent. A girl her age needs to eat well. If I can help them, then it's my duty. My whole life, I've saved people with my hands. Why can't I do it with my heart? Eugenia Viktorovna looked at her son for a long time. Doubt was in her eyes, but she was still proud that she had raised such a person. Trust, but verify, she finally said. When you get back, still try to find out something about this woman. 3 days flew by unnoticed. Miller finished all the necessary work at the dacha and was getting ready to go back to the city. Eugenia Viktorovna asked to go with him, but the man refused. He needed to prepare Tatiana for his mother's arrival. At the same time, he wanted to make sure the woman had met his expectations. Mom, maybe I should bring them here instead. Alice will really like it here. And Tatiana, she's not afraid of physical work. She can help you with the chores. Oh, son, I don't know. All right, you've always been a smart boy. I hope you haven't made a mistake this time. Bring them. We'll see what kind of people they are. Glad Mom gave in, David thought. It was hard to argue with her, but no matter what, she was a good person. Having packed, he drove home. The journey didn't take long. Few people returned to the city on weekdays. When Miller pulled up to the building, he looked at the windows for a long time. Nothing indicated the presence of occupants in the apartment. For a moment, he even got scared. Had Tanya run away? The door was locked from the inside. He rang the doorbell. After a few seconds, Tanya opened it. She looked happy. The expression of fear had left her face, and her cheeks no longer seemed hollow. Here I am, Miller announced and entered the apartment. How are you doing? Alice ran out to meet him. She froze in the doorway and examined Miller with her huge eyes, full of interest. Everything's fine, Tanya smiled. And we're drawing. Thank you so much for the paints. I've never seen Allie so happy. Oh, really? Well then, show me your masterpieces. I'll go make some tea for now. Let me do it, Tanya offered. By the way, I've already made lunch. Wow, Miller exclaimed, sniffing the air. I can smell something delicious. To the kitchen, then. I wouldn't turn down a treat after an early breakfast. Alice ran into the room and soon returned, carrying a stack of drawings. While Tanya set the table, the girl showed off her masterpieces to Miller. For a 6-year-old, Alice drew quite well. David was even surprised. Tanya, I think you should enroll the girl in art school. She has obvious talent. Really? I'd love to, but David didn't let her finish. He looked at the girl seriously. Alice, tell me, do you want to learn to draw like real artists? Yes, the girl replied modestly and looked at her mother. Tanya nodded. Then I suggest you enroll in a school, a special place where they teach drawing. If you're interested, we can go and sign up tomorrow. Alice just looked at her mother without saying anything. The girl's eyes lit up. It was clear that David's offer interested her. But that's probably very expensive, Tanya said, embarrassed. All right, I don't want to hear that again. Expensive or not expensive? What difference does it make if the child has talent? It's worth developing it so you don't blame yourself later. I'll pay for everything. You don't need to worry about that. If you're uncomfortable with this, Tanya, let's agree on this. When you get back on your feet, you can pay me back, okay? Is that possible? The woman asked, surprised. Anything is possible. I live alone. I have nowhere to spend my money, so I can afford to spend it on a worthwhile cause. After lunch, Miller thanked Tatiana for the delicious meal. He noted to himself that the young woman cooked very well. I'm going to take a nap. I'm tired from the trip, and I also woke up very early. By the way, if you'd like, we can go to the dacha together in a few days. You'll like it there. That would probably be inconvenient, Tanya hesitated, especially since your mother is there. Mom already knows. I told her everything. Seriously? And how did she react? She was probably angry that you brought beggars into the house? First of all, not beggars, but people in trouble. That's a huge difference. Secondly, she was angry, of course, but she got over it quickly. She understands everything. After all, she's the one who raised me, so I got many of my character traits from her. She never went out into nature. Only once did we all go to the sea together, but her daughter was still a baby then and doesn't remember anything. All the more reason to go then. All right, I'll rest, and then we can figure something out. Miller retreated to the bedroom. He fell asleep almost immediately. The emotional strain had taken its toll. When the man woke up, the apartment was very quiet. Tanya and Alice were also resting. He quietly left the bedroom. Passing the living room, he saw Tatiana sitting with her back to him out of the corner of his eye. She was quietly sobbing, discreetly dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. David coughed. Tanya flinched and turned around, immediately wiping away her tears with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Sorry, I didn't mean to. No, it's fine. I was just thinking. Why are you crying? What do you have there? It's a photo of my parents. Tanya handed Miller an old faded photograph. It's all I have left of them. When I ran away from home, all I grabbed were my documents in this photo. David carefully took the piece of glossy cardboard she handed him. It showed two happy people. The man was tenderly embracing the woman, whose eyes sparkled with happiness. Miller's breath caught in his throat. What's wrong? Tanya asked, concerned, seeing David's face change. Is this your parents? Yes, the woman nodded. And what were their names? My mom was Helen and my dad was Robbie. Oh, God, Miller whispered and sank heavily onto the sofa. David, are you okay? You've gone so pale. Let me get you some water. Without waiting for an answer, Tanya sprang up from the living room and returned a few seconds later with a glass of water. Miller drank it down greedily. Thank you, he mumbled. You scared me so much. Is it your blood pressure? My mother-in-law used to go suddenly pale and collapse. She had low blood pressure. No, Tanya, it's not my blood pressure. Hold on. I need to process this information. What information? The woman asked, surprised. Did my parents upset you somehow? They didn't just upset me, Tanya. You'll understand everything in a minute. Miller abruptly stood up from the sofa and went to a large chest of drawers. He opened the bottom drawer and took out two heavy velvet photo albums. Such albums used to be very popular. Each contained corners for family snapshots, on which precious moments of the past were forever frozen. David frantically thumbed through the heavy cardboard pages. What he was looking for didn't seem to be there. Eugenia Viktorovna kept everything, but that picture? Had she thrown it away? Among the empty pages, David found the snapshot. The photo was about 35 years old. That was the last time they had all gone to the sea together as a family. With a trembling hand, Miller hooked the corner of the black and white photograph. He looked at it for a long time. From the picture, a smiling little boy with a sunburned nose smeared with sour cream looked back at him. The boy was sitting on the lap of a mustachioed man. Slowly, Miller walked over to Tanya and handed her the photo. The woman looked at the picture, confused. She knew this mustachioed man very well. His gaze only looked stern in photos. In life, her father was very kind and often laughed. How is this possible? Tanya looked at Miller. Where did you get a photo of my father? I don't understand. When was this? Almost 40 years ago. You weren't even born yet, David sighed. His father's name was also Robbie. It can't be. Tanya jumped up from the sofa. It was clear how tense her body had become. That doesn't happen. As you can see, it does. Miller's gaze searched the emptiness. The man couldn't gather his thoughts. It's just a coincidence. It's a common name. And men often looked alike in old Soviet photos. I get it. It's the mustache. Tanya, David stood up and took the young woman's hands. You know perfectly well it's not about the mustache. Both your father and mine are the same person. The confusion on the woman's face was hard to describe. Emotions changed one after another. Finally, she couldn't hold back and cried. Miller held her tightly to his chest and stroked her blonde hair for a long time. The next day, Miller took Tanya and Alice to the dacha. The newly found relatives both became quiet for some reason. It was hard to find words. I'll tell Mom myself, Miller broke the silence. Of course, Tanya nodded. I wouldn't even have thought of blurting it all out to her right away. They hadn't told Alice anything yet. For a child, the appearance of a biological uncle probably wouldn't be such a shock, but for now, David and Tatiana decided not to rush. Too many things had happened in the past week. Eugenia Viktorovna was waiting for them. Having finished all the chores around the house, she had tidied up. When the whole group got out of the car, the woman looked at the guests with suspicion. "Mom," Miller called out happily to her. "I'm not alone, as I promised. Meet Tatiana, Eugenia Viktorovna, and this charming young lady is called Alice." "Hello," Tanya said modestly. Alice also squeaked something. Eugenia Viktorovna's stern face broke into a smile at the sight of the girl. She loved children very much and couldn't resist their sincere simplicity. "Good afternoon, girls. Nice to see you. Why are we standing here? Come into the house quickly. I'll make lunch now. You must be tired from the trip. Are you hungry?" "I can help," Tanya said, encouraged. "Oh no, I can manage myself?" "Mom, it's impolite to refuse, especially since Tatiana cooks wonderfully. I was amazed by the serniki myself." "Serniki?" his mother asked, wary. Apparently the mention of that dish stirred up some unpleasant memories in her soul. "Yes," David smiled. "You'll be surprised, but they're exactly like Dad used to make." At the mention of Robert, Eugenia Viktorovna winced. So many years had passed, and she still couldn't forgive her ex-husband for his betrayal. For this proud woman, there was nothing worse than such an abandonment of the family. "Well, we won't be making serniki right now," the woman replied casually. "If you really want to help, please come to the kitchen. And you, Davy, show the girl the garden for now." "Well, Allie?" Miller winked at the little girl. "Do you want to see the most beautiful flowers in the world?" "The most?" The girl's eyes widened. "They couldn't be more beautiful. Let's go together." They went into the garden. Alice ran from one flower bed to another, inhaling the scent of the beautiful blossoms. "And there are berries there, too," David called out to the little girl. "Do you like berries? The raspberries are ripe." "I don't know," the girl shrugged uncertainly. "Don't tell me you've never eaten raspberries." "I have, but I've definitely never tried ones like these." David walked over to the bushes and picked a handful of large red berries. She cautiously took one berry and put it in her mouth. Her eyes immediately lit up with delight. "Delicious." "Can I have another one?" "Of course you can eat them all if you want. The whole garden is at your disposal." Alice laughed and ran towards the bushes. She was so happy that Miller involuntarily laughed. He settled into a deck chair and turned his face to the sun. "Lunch!" his mother's voice called. David woke from his half-sleep. Alice had eaten her fill of berries. Her whole face was smeared with juice. "Good heavens, look, you're all messy. Let's go quickly and wash up or Mom will scold you." Alice obediently followed Miller. He turned on the garden hose. The girl cupped her hands and began to wash her face with abandon. She got completely soaked. When they came to the summer kitchen, Eugenia Viktorovna and Tatiana had already set the table. The women had made okroshka, cold soup. Steam rose from boiled potatoes sprinkled with green onions, and next to them, on a large platter, lay a pile of appetizing fried chicken. "Wow," David exclaimed, "a real country feast." "And the main thing," Eugenia Viktorovna remarked, "you did it all so quickly. Tanya has golden hands. You weren't lying when you said she cooks wonderfully. Thank you for bringing a helper." Miller noted to himself that Tatiana had already become Tanya. His mother didn't warm up to people so quickly. Apparently, this young woman had found a way to win the heart of this proud woman. David liked this very much, as a very serious conversation was still ahead. When lunch was finished, Alice was carried into the house. The little girl had dozed off right on the bench. Eugenia Viktorovna took Tanya into the garden to show off her plants. Miller followed them. When the tour of the hostess's domain, which had delighted Tanya completely, was over, everyone settled in the gazebo for conversation. Tanya, not used to so much fresh air, started to doze off. David escorted her into the house and settled her next to the sleeping Alice. Returning to the garden, he sat down next to his mother. "Mommy," David began coaxingly. "Well, what do you think of the girls?" "A miracle," Eugenia Viktorovna exclaimed. "Honestly, I didn't expect this. I thought you'd bring some drunk, all bruised. And here's such a decent young woman, and her daughter is just lovely. Quiet, surprised by everything. It's clear the child hasn't been spoiled. Yes. If only you had a wife like that with a child already, I'd accept her as my own granddaughter. That's what I wanted to talk about. Dave? His mother looked at him surprised. Are you saying you've fallen in love with Tanya? Only a week has passed. I was just joking. I have, Mom, but not in the way you imagine. How so? Eugenia Viktorovna looked at him puzzled. Can you love in some other way? I brought something you need to see. With these words, Miller took an envelope from his pocket. He carefully took out his own photograph. Here, take a look. You remember this, don't you? Eugenia Viktorovna took the photo he handed her. She sighed deeply. Where did you dig this up? I thought I had thrown away all of Robbie's photos. I kept it myself. After all, he wasn't just your husband, but my father, too. Ex-husband, the woman countered. Yes, but not an ex-father, Miller objected. Mom, I know this conversation isn't very pleasant for you. Dad hurt you deeply and you never managed to forgive him. But surely you found out how he was living? I'll never believe that your female curiosity didn't overcome your pride. You're right, Davy, his mother sighed deeply. Whatever happened, I always loved your father. He hurt me badly, and perhaps I was wrong not to let you see him. But he suffered greatly. I didn't even accept money from him, although life wasn't easy for me. Pride was to blame for everything. You can't get rid of it. I know that he found happiness with his Helen. There was nothing left for me but to accept it. What was the point of making scenes, trying to get him back with threats or deceit? We wouldn't have built happiness on that anyway. And then he had a daughter, especially since why would I interfere with them? So I forgot, and I made you believe the same. And then, that accident. I didn't even tell you about it. Robbie and his wife were coming back from some party. Their neighbor told me about it. I went to the funeral, you know. You didn't even tell me? What was there to tell? How a drunk man in a Volga crashed into them? There's no point discussing it now. I made many mistakes. But I had the right to know. He was still my father. Robbie died instantly, Eugenia Viktorovna continued sighing, and they tried to resuscitate Helen, but it didn't work out. She was actually operated on in your hospital, but you were just starting out then. I don't even know who the surgeon was. She didn't survive. They had a daughter left. I don't even know where she is now. She's about 10 years younger than you. I only saw her briefly at the funeral. A blonde girl, ash blonde. Just like your Tanya. Very similar. Mom, Miller gathered his thoughts. Tanya is my sister. What? Eugenia Viktorovna tensed up with surprise. It can't be. She does look alike, of course, but you shouldn't draw such a conclusion based only on my story. Where did you get that idea? David took the second photograph from the envelope and gave it to his mother. I saw this picture in Tanya's hands when I got home. These are her parents. I was paralyzed at first when I saw my father, and then I showed her that photo. Are you saying that? Yes, there can be no doubt. Tatiana is Dad's daughter from his second marriage. Therefore, she is my sister. But this is just incredible. Can you imagine how small the chances were of you meeting, especially under the circumstances you described? There are no coincidences, Mommy, Miller hugged her. Apparently someone up there decided that family should be together. They've had enough suffering. Now everything will be all right. As for Alice, you want to hold a grandchild, don't you? A granddaughter, Mom. A granddaughter. Everything you wanted, but don't wake her up. There's plenty of time. Eugenia Viktorovna hugged her son and looked at the windows of her old dacha, at the room where the mother and daughter were now sleeping peacefully. A blissful smile played on her face.